Everybody, I'm excited. Hood Biographies is finally taking off. The first story, since I'll be doing the interviewing, will be me. So I guess this is a hood autobiography. So let's get into me. Um, some of you probably have heard the snippet of a song that I put out called WAP. And I start out by saying twice
I'm complicated, totally different. I'll confuse you.
that I'm complicated, totally different. I'll confuse you. Don't ever let what you see or hear about me confuse you. Okay? So I'll start with my name, which is complicated and totally different. Hopefully I don't confuse you. Okay? So my chosen name, the name that I go by, is Dassah Israel. That is a name that was chosen because while reading the Bible one day, I was reading Esther, and it just resonated with my spirit. It just felt good. Like, that's my name. Not her slave name, which was Esther, but her Hebrew name, which is Hadassah. Hadassah means myrtle, like the myrtle tree. Come to find out, that's my favorite tree. I didn't even know how to say the name when I first got it. I was pronouncing it incorrectly. A kid, a babe, had to correct me. And thank God I'm open to correction because I needed it, right? So when I was corrected, I looked up the meaning, and the meaning of myrtle is the reinstitution of God's law. And I was like, wow, that is major. Like, that's, wow, am I even fit to have that kind of name? But it was already mine. I was already going by it. I've actually gone by a lot of names. A lot of names. My childhood nickname, I'm not going to tell y'all because everybody don't get to call me that. But that was the name that I went by until I was taken in by my grandmother after I was taken away from my mom. And the first name that I learned was Chanel Cervantes. So that's the name that I went by all the way until, let's see, well, I had a couple names in that time period. One was Chanel X, which didn't really hold much weight because my dad was locked up and he was going through his things because Cervantes came in because of an identity crisis that my grandmother was going through, which is a whole nother story. But he and my uncle, they didn't like the name. It wasn't theirs. They were not, Hispanic. The name actually got my dad into a lot of trouble. But I went by Chanel X only when I was dealing with him. Writing letters, going to visit, things of that sort. I went to school for a little while under another name, an African name,
Sharifa.
until I went to the group home. And in the group home, they were like, oh no, your name is Chanel D'Angelo. That's what's on your birth certificate. So that's what we're going to go by. So I went by that name for a very long time. But none of my documents match. Why am I so complicated? I don't know. But my first name is spelled different on some documents. My middle name is even spelled different on some documents. And then I had a different last name. So I'm excited and I love my chosen name because it's mine. And I know how to say it. I know how to spell it. There's no confusion. I even had a bank close my account, said they did not want to do business with me because I was committing fraud and my documents didn't match. Even though I did everything I could to explain why my documents don't match, which I still don't know. But even something as simple as my name as you can see, is complicated. But those are my names. And a name is supposed to have meaning. You know, in the Bible, when parents name their child, it was usually after something, or it meant something, or they had a reason for naming the child whatever it was that they named them. So confusion confusion is something that I could say, yeah, that was me, because how you spell it this way, that way. Now, back in the day, before everything was computerized, it was no problem. I'll just say spell it like this and it was fine. But as we got into this computerized age, that one letter made a big difference. So it was hard to find me in a lot of systems, because my first name could be spelled like this, my middle name could be spelled like that, my last name could have a space, could not, just depend on who was working that day and how they decided to spell my name. I still have issues with it to this day, but that's another story. We may get to that later. So that's my name. I am a single mother of 4 amazing individuals that I take no credit for, because they were gifted to me, and it was my job to help them become the people that they needed to become, and to help them through the journey called life that we all have to go through. And I've held many different positions, many different great accomplishments. You'll probably hear about those too, because like I said, my hood autobiography, it's gonna be a long one. Hopefully y'all not bored, because I think I'm a pretty good storyteller. Anyways, so the beginning of me. Well, I was born in Compton, California. The last few who are able to say that, because after the Great White Flight, Compton went down and the hospital was closed. But I was born to parents who were not together at all. Matter of fact, my dad didn't even claim me. And from the looks of it, according to my birth certificate and the way his name was spelled, that wasn't even a sure thing. I stayed with my mom. It was my mom, my granny, and my aunt. That was family. That was all I knew. I don't really remember a whole lot from that age, that era, because I was taken away at probably about 4. I was probably about 4 years old. Due to drugs. I'm an 80s baby. So, they were trying to kill us when they start pushing that crack into our communities that was targeted to us. Specifically engineered in a lab to attach to melanin. Which is a known fact. And if you think about it and look into it, you'll see that it's true. That people who are the most strung out on crack are the heavy melanated. They are the darker skin. Now you got crackheads all colors. But the more melanin, the harder the addiction. The harder it is to kick. All those different things, right? So I've heard a few stories. Like some people can say, oh, my parents met like this and this happened like that. Well, my family didn't talk. So I don't know the truth. I mean, my dad told me some stories about how he met my mom and how they got together and all these things. And I won't be sharing that either. But my mom never talked about it. I mean, she didn't really talk about anything, actually. But it was a different kind of household. And the last memory I think I have of them was probably about my 4th birthday, when I'm just laughing so hard, cake falling out my mouth, getting birthday licks. Great time. I also remember way back then, the first time I smelled crack. That's probably odd, right? But it's the truth. I remember we were playing hide and seek. We were supposed to be outside. They sent all the kids outside. You know how we played outside back in the day. And I had a great hiding place under the bed. I don't remember whose room it was, but it was one of the adults' room under the bed. So I go to hide under the bed, and the adults come in and they start smoking. I smell it. I'll never forget that smell. And I got scared. Like, I can't come out. Right now, I'm going to be in trouble. So while waiting for them to leave, I fell asleep. Come to find out, the kids can't find me. They outside searching, going crazy. And finally, somebody looks under the bed. I'm under the bed asleep, knocked out. I don't know how long I was down there. But those are the only memories that I have of living with my mom at, that time. The next memories I have are going to court. I remember, I don't remember being taken. I remember going to what I now know is juvenile hall. And that was crazy. But I remember you go to court, they give you this little teddy bear, take you to the cafeteria, let you get whatever food. I still remember the smell of that food. I don't like it. But I remember my mom, my granny, and my aunt crying. I was taken, my little brother was taken, and my little cousin. And, but they weren't with me. They were maybe 1 year old, my cousin and brother. I was, older, about 4 years old. And they were crying. And they sitting there just boo-hooing. I don't know what's going on. I just know the lady that gave me the teddy bear took me back to the back. And I didn't see them again for a long time. When I left there, I went and stayed with some cousins for a little while. I don't have much family out here. Well, in California. It was basically my granny, her aunt, and her husband, and their kids. That was all the family we had on my mom's side. That was completely it. So that was the only option. I went and stayed with them for a little while, but they had older kids, and I am horrible with directions. Now, the school was only maybe 3 blocks away. You made one turn. And I had the simple task of walking home after school. But I was never alone before. I never had to be responsible. So every day after school, I sat there until the school closed, until somebody came and got me. My cousin, he used to come and pick me up. And then he would start picking me up and running home. So to try to help me, find my way home. But that didn't work. And for whatever reasons, I couldn't stay with them. Next thing I know, I meet this Mexican lady that says she's my grandmother and I'm going to live with her. Well, that is where it all begins. I was only supposed to stay with her for a little while, until either I went back to my mom or until my dad got out of jail. He was only supposed to do 1 year. Okay? So that 1 year turned into 2, turned into 4, turned into 6. He did like 10, 11 years. So the whole time I'm with her, she didn't really want me there. You know, it was like a chore. It was something that I'm doing this out of the kindness of my heart for a little while and it'll be over soon. But over soon never really came. So that's where I grew up, in the Santa Fe Gardens in Compton, California. And it was me, her, and her daughter, who I'm going to refer to as my sister cousin, because we were 9 months apart. I'm a little older. I'm clearly a black girl, and she's clearly a Mexican girl. So explaining to people that this is my aunt, it just didn't make sense to them. Everybody said we were lying. You're older than her, but that's your auntie. You black, but she Mexican. Y'all lying. Y'all just friends. So instead of saying that's my aunt, I would just say that's my cousin. And it worked. Until forever. Still one to this day. But staying there was a blessing and a challenge. It was pleasurable and painful at the same time, which is probably hard to explain. Now, don't get me wrong. I love her. Beautiful woman. Did a lot of nice things, kept in contact with a lot of people, because that's just how she was. She was a politician. At one point, she was a school teacher. She had all these different jobs and different hats that she wore, and she was great. But she could be mean. She was very upfront, very powerful, very strong. You know, I mean, it was because of her that we stayed in the Santa Fe Gardens as long as we did. I saw that community go from beautiful green grass. I mean, this is a complex that President Bush at one point lived in. They were sold individually. So they looked like apartments, but they were more like condos because they were sold individually. Each one, had their own owner. Some, you might have, 4 units owned by one person. Something like that. But 9 times out of 10, each one was individually owned. And I saw it go from beautiful green grass to boarded up, burnt down, just ran through. Because the Great White Flight was not nice to us. If you don't know what the Great White Flight is, you should look it up. Because it didn't just happen in Compton. It happened all across the nation. Basically, black people moved in, white people moved out. And when they left, they took their companies, they took their jobs, they took their money, and they left us to fend. And like I said, you can see it all across the nation. And when they pushed crack into the communities, they really went down. And they went down fast. I mean, we would call, well, not we, because I didn't call, but she would call the police and the police wouldn't come. They just wouldn't come. So what she would do is, how she kept our area safe, is she would go apartment to apartment with her gun, kicking out squatters, drug dealers, prostitutes, gangsters, whoever it was. If you're not supposed to be here, you're not going to be here. So take it somewhere else. And that's what they did. I don't know what she said to him or how she waved the gun, but they listened. And that's how she kept our area safe. That's how our area stayed up. I was around people who some never ever left the city. You know, they didn't travel, didn't go anywhere. We were sent to school in the Gentile neighborhoods. You know, we traveled a lot. We saw a lot of things, went to a lot of places. She kept us busy. She shielded us from a lot of things. But my neighbors weren't so lucky. You know, so the friends that were friends with us, they went to with us a lot of places. We went to Disneyland and Knoxbury Farm often. We usually had, you know, yearly passes. Just something to do. Went camping, went all kind of things. And since she was a politician, we stayed in the council meetings. She had us doing all kind of things. I was on the youth city council committee at maybe the age of 13. You know, we spoke extremely proper. We pronounced all of our R's, ER's, ING's, everything, because she wasn't having it. She was very strict. Very strict. And we didn't go anywhere unless she said so. We didn't have certain friends unless she okayed it. Plus it was hard to have friends where we went to school, because once we left school, we left that city. So it was no hanging out. Can you come to my house? Can I go to your house? No, none of that. But it was very different. That's what I'll say. I told you I'm complicated. You know, and she stayed on our heads. I mean, I grew up in the era where if you said something crazy, you got a backhand real fast. You didn't even see it coming. All you knew was, oop, is my lip bleeding? Am I? Like, ooh, won't say that. I'm just sit down and be quiet. Which is probably why I was oddly quiet. I mean, I didn't have anything to say about anything. Ever. We knew a child is to stay in a child's place. Stay out of my conversation. If I say something, don't correct me. None of that. But be ready to be corrected all the time. I mean, if she was the type, if we said something that was incorrect, let's say we used, it could have been anything, verb, adverb, adjective, pronoun, whatever. If we said anything wrong, she corrected us immediately on the spot. You know, it was no we is. Something like that, she would say he, no, he, she, it is. We, they, you are. We had to correct it immediately. So that's what we did, you know. And it was a lot of times where when I really started moving around, I would tell people, you know, people would say, oh, where are you from? California. Oh, what part? Compton. No, you're not from Compton. You can't be. No, you speak so proper. You sound, you pronounce your ERs, and that's just what we did. Actually, it wasn't until I got grown and I said, I feel a disconnect with me and too many of my people. Because when they hear me speak, they see privileged. And that's something I wasn't. They see silver spoon. And that's something I never had. You know what I mean? We didn't even have things that normal kids have. When cable came out, we didn't have cable. We never had cable. I stayed there until I was about 13, 14. I'm going to say 14. And we didn't have cable. When I got to see cable, it was when I went to visit my cousins. And we'll get into that. But we didn't have name brand anything unless we found it at the thrift store. Because she was a bargain shopper. I mean, our closets were filled to the brim. We had to dress the part. Had to. Even the ugliest things, she would be upset. Like, you don't know what fashion is. Put it on. And tuck that shirt in. It was so bad. I would go to school. This was probably like, this was elementary, middle school. And my friend would be like, into the bathroom. Before we even go get breakfast. No, we finna fix this. Take that shirt out. Untuck that shirt. No, change this, change that. Like, you look like a complete geek. You look like a nerd. You know, but that's what we had. You know? And it got to the point where it didn't matter what I had on. I knew I was fly. Because I'm cute. Matching from head to toe. It might not be name brand, but I'm finna make it pop. That's why to this day, yeah, I could throw an outfit together. It ain't nothing. Because you just got to know how to do it. A little this, a little that, a little seasoning. And you'll be good. You'll be straight, right? So, I didn't want to feel that disconnect from my people. So, I took it upon myself to stop speaking so proper. To use more slang. To, you know what I mean? But we'll get into that a little bit later too. So, let me go back. I wanted my mom when I was taken away. You know, I saw, we didn't hug at my grandma's house. It was just something we didn't do. I mean, her daughter would feel, or maybe it was just normal, you know, to go lay up under her mom, you know, all of that. But I wanted my mom. So I would cry. I don't know how many years this went on. Maybe 1, maybe 2. I don't know. But I would just go in the room and I would just cry. And she would let me. You know, people would be like, is she crying? What's she crying for? Just let her cry. So I would go in the room and I would cry so much that the neighbors upstairs thought she was abusing me. You know, so they would call and make complaints. Somebody needs to check on this little girl. Something is wrong. She crying all the time. For hours. This girl just been crying nonstop, just loud, just you know what I mean? But I didn't get her. You know, you could probably tell from the story, I didn't get her. Matter of fact, my mom ended up having another baby that was taken directly from the hospital. She didn't even get to take this one home. He got to go with my brother, who was with a foster mom, right? So the foster mom has both of my brothers. She changed the name of the younger one because my mom really didn't get to name him. She didn't get to do anything. He had drugs in the system. He was a crack baby. So they took him immediately. And in me wanting my mom, you know, I didn't just want my mom, but I wanted my family. And my baby brother, he used to do this all the time. So I would do that. That would be like a coping mechanism where I would just do this. It reminded me of my baby brother, you know. And when I remember my grandma came and told me, you know, one day, because we went to this Christian school, Christian Foundation Nursery Private School to be exact. And they came and put me out of class one day, and she asked me, do you want me to adopt you? I don't know what none of this stuff means. I'm like kindergarten, first grade. I don't know what none of this stuff means. I don't know. So she decided not to, because at this point it was clear that my mom was not going to get any of us back. I didn't know the condition that my mom was in at that point. Nobody told me anything. I just knew I wanted my mom. And at this time, I couldn't even see her. We couldn't even have visits. Not even monitored. You know. So, when they told me I had a little brother, a new little brother, I wanted to see him. Well, some years went by, and it it never happened. But now I'm older. I'm probably maybe 7, 8. And I started mentioning it a lot, all the time. I want to see them, because I was still able to go visit my cousins, which were the only connection to my mom, my granny, and my aunt. The only, people that I knew, grew up with. And finally, my grandmother made it a point to contact my social worker and say she has a right to see her brothers. Even though she can't see her mom, she wants to see her brothers. Whoo-wee. That was something else. That was something else. And I used to pray about it a lot. Since we went to this Christian school, and she took us to church every Sunday. I had this connection with God that I didn't even realize that I had. I was probably an awkward kid. I remember one time we were making Mother's Day cards, and I made one for my mom, and I made one for my grandmother. And I wrote on there, "Forgive me, please forgive me, for I know not what I do." I'm like, maybe first grade. What first grader is talking like that? You know what I mean? But anyways, I would read the Bible. Because my cousins also took me to church. So church was just something that was done, period, every Sunday. No matter where I was. At home, visiting them, whatever. So, I actually remember the first time I identified myself in the Bible. I was reading Revelations. Little girl, didn't really understand it. And see, I would try to read the Bible. I wanted to read it from beginning to end. So I would start at Genesis. And as soon as I got to he begot them, and they begot him, and he begot him, I'm like, oh, this is boring. I'm going to read the end. So I would read Revelations. And when I read about the 144,000, the first thought was like, that's me. I'm in there. I'm one of those. And then maybe a few years later, I was reading like, okay, maybe I'm in the mixed multitude. Like maybe I'm putting myself up on a pedestal that I shouldn't be on. But after making that connection, I kind of stopped reading. I didn't really read. But I still, went to church, went to visit my cousins. So these cousins, right? So it was a husband and wife and their 2 children. Now the daughter, they both of the children were older than me, but the daughter, she was like my most favorite cousin in the whole world. My favorite color purple to this day because of her. Because Purple Rain was out, and that was her favorite movie, so that was my favorite movie. Her favorite color is purple, so my favorite color is purple. She liked Prince, so I like Prince. I used to get in trouble for putting on her lipstick. It was the purple one. Because I just wanted to be like her so bad. So, and then it was the son, who, it was just like, whatever. He get on my nerves. That's just my cousin. It's whatever. So that was that. But when I would go over there, they would be the connection to my mom. Have you heard from my mom? Her phone number is disconnected. Do you have her phone number? Do you know where she lives? Can I, and that was how I was able to stay in communication with my mom. It was very seldom, but it still happened. So in all actuality, if you think of it, I have been chasing my mom my whole entire life. This is definitely a part of the curses. Definitely. I mean, you can read it in Deuteronomy 28, where children will be taken away from you and there will be nothing you could do about it. You will have a child and not enjoy them. The Bible says this. And this is something that went on in my family. I wasn't the first to not be raised by my mom, even though I was taken away from my mom because of the crafty counsel of this country, pushing drugs into the system.